With Grounded 2 officially out on pre-release, I decided that now is a good time to jump back into the original Grounded and get myself ready to jump into another tiny adventure. The backyard was as great as I had left it. An army of bugs trying to kill me, and nothing but a giant base and a massive zipline transit system to console me. Going through all my old builds reminded me how much time I put into Grounded. But I also realized that despite the fact I put in literally hundreds of hours into my survival playthrough, there were still some things that I had never done in this game. I'm specifically referring to the secret bosses that lie in wait at the far reaches of the backyard. The Broodmother, the Orchid Mantis, and the Wasp Queen. These bosses require offerings of specially crafted recipes to face them, and in return, they'll give you a wild and definitely not stressful combat experience. If you end up liking this video, feel free to leave a like or subscribe to my channel for content just like this and more. You can also leave a comment about your experience with these bosses or what you would like me to try next. With that said, I'm excited to share how my little adventure went. So here we go. The day started like any other in the backyard. I awoke from my bed and began stocking up on supplies that I would need to take on my first target, the Broodmother. I was fortunate that hundreds of hours of compulsive survival game hoarding left me with the ingredients that I needed to craft the Broodmother BLT, the special recipe required to summon her. I threw it in the oven, and while it was cooking, set out to grab more materials to craft healing items. In this process, I may have upset an entire colony of red ants that refused to leave me alone. At least that's the story that I'm going with. So while they chose violence, I chose a hammer. Several bug-related war crimes later, I began the trek towards the Hedges where the Broodmother was waiting. On my way there, I pondered to myself what this fight was going to be like. I knew where to find the bosses, but I had never once challenged them to a fight. How much health were they going to have? What were their attack patterns? Their weaknesses? How many smoothies would I have to jam into my face to stave off inevitable death? There was only one way to find out. I began ascending the hedges and made my way up through the winding paths of branches, eventually making it to the entrance of the Broodmother's lair. I walked up, offered the BLT, and the battle began. Despite her sheer size, the fight started off really well. By pure coincidence, I had my Coltana equipped, which happened to be the Broodmother's only elemental weakness. Listen, I know how this looks. I swear this is really my first time ever fighting this boss. I just use the Coltana a lot because it's a great weapon, and who would pass up a chance to use a flaming katana? Anyway, the Broodmother tried to turn the tide in her favor by summoning some spiderlings and orb weavers to get in my way. Fortunately, their weakness is also spicy. After a few more cycles of attacks and summoning minions, I had her on the ropes and eventually claimed victory. 1 down, 2 to go. At this point, I was feeling pretty good. The Broodmother was big, but not really the challenge I was expecting. I was kind of ready to put a death counter on this video to show how many attempts it would take me to take down each boss, but I was able to do that one on the first try. With my confidence boosted and ignoring the obvious foreshadowing of what's to come, I marched back home to make my second recipe, the Mantis kebabs, to summon the Orchid Mantis. The Broodmother BLT was simple enough to make, so I assumed that I would have the ingredients to... Okay, never mind. After farming the Broodmother 2 more times, I got the chunks that I needed to craft the Mantis kebabs and made my way to the upper yard. The Orchid Mantis lives in the flower pot in the front of the shed, beyond a bunch of black ants. I made my way through the hose and offered up my delicious kebabs to begin what I now realized as a much more difficult fight. The Orchid Mantis was way more difficult than the Broodmother. It had at least twice as much health and was way more erratic in its movements. While it didn't summon minions to get between us, it had some much more difficult status effects that I had to deal with. The health regen debuff made my mosquito needle effectively useless, and the bleeding effect it left after almost every strike had me sucking down smoothies every few seconds. I want to say that some of its attacks were even indefensible, but that could also just be me being bad at combat in this game. That was the logic that I went with, as this thing steamrolled me again, and again, and again. After about 25 minutes of having my butt handed to me, I did eventually take it down. 1 more to go. The Wasp Queen was a boss that required a little more legwork for me to face. In order to gain access to the lair that she's waiting in, you have to basically go on a wasp killing spree. Once you've killed enough of Wasp drones, you'll eventually get a message that says you have disturbed the nest. After sleeping for the night, you'll get a cutscene of wasps breaking out of a space in the upper yard and going to infest other parts of the map. This was precisely where we needed to go to take on our final boss. I ziplined as close as I could to the hole the wasps escaped from and made my way inside. After narrowly avoiding an encounter with a Black Widow, I made my way into the wasp nest. I grabbed my BBQ medley and jammed it into the wall of the nest. The final battle was upon us. Any hope that I had of the Wasp Queen being a more merciful battle than the Orchid Mantis was quickly squashed as she started flinging venom everywhere. I'd stocked up on plenty of smoothies before coming here, but I was going through them much faster than I expected. The Wasp Queen was very mobile and had the added inconvenience of spending most of her time in the air. This was troublesome since my Salt Morningstar was my weapon of choice, and I had to get up close and personal to do any meaningful damage. After a handful of deaths, I started to get used to her attack pattern. She would ground herself as she summoned some drones, so that was my chance to get some damage in. Things were starting to look up for me. If I can keep this up, then I'll wear her down and be able to win. However, I didn't expect the drones to start healing her as her health bar got low enough. They kept their distance while the queen attacked, keeping my focus from them as they slowly undid all the hard-earned damage I inflicted. Slowly but surely, one salty swing after another, the drones fell. And so did the queen. Holy cow, that was hard. But that's it. Mission accomplished. With the secret bosses officially slain, I celebrated by crafting some of the armor and weapon recipes I learned from analyzing their pieces. These look super cool, and I'm sure I'll use them in a future playthrough. Overall, this was a really fun challenge. I got to revisit my old playthrough and Giant Fort, and fight some enemies that I never fought before I moved on to other games. Now that Grounded 2 is out, I plan on making more videos of my playthrough there and any crazy antics that come with it. Thanks so much for coming with me on this journey. It's always appreciated. Until next time, everybody.